From NJ.com and the Heldridge Hotel, welcome to the Rutgers Rant, your one-stop podcast for the Scarlet Knights, with your host, Steve Politi, and Rutgers insider Brian Fonseca. Let's start shopping.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the Rant. Both me and Fonseca down here in Piscataway. I am at SHI Stadium as Brian is looking out. Good thing they're not playing right now. It is not nice out here. It's tough to kick a field goal, which has already become a tough thing to do under the best of circumstances for the Scarlet Knights. We're going to talk about the Washington game, I guess. I don't know, contractually required to talk about it. We'll preview the Oregon game, I guess. Contractually required to do so. But I mean, come on, at the risk of becoming a Penn State podcast, the most interesting thing that's happened by far in college football, Penn State firing James Franklin since Rutgers plays them. I think it gives us an opening to just start with that because I don't know. I mean, I get it, Brian. I understand why they did it. It had gotten toxic. I understand all that. I'm still sort of floored.
Yeah, it's shocking, right? The second biggest buyout in the history of college sports. The timing, it was the only question because he was going to get fired after losing to UCLA Northwestern in a year where it was national championship or bust. I had initially thought they would wait till the end of the year. They'd come to a mutual understanding. And, instead of paying $49 million or whatever, they'd, find a way to part ways. But it makes sense to do it now because recruiting for next season starts now. It doesn't start in December when the season's over. You have to prepare everything for the next year, get your recruiting class together, get your transfer portal targets together, and have your next coach in place so that when you're recruiting your next team, you're not recruiting with air, with a hope of, we'll get this guy as the coach. So I get why they did it. Still, one of the craziest coaching firings we'll see in college sports, one of the craziest collapses you'll see from a top 2 preseason team. And now, the first thought I had, and I tweeted this before he even got fired, this kind of adds to it. Rutgers might be favored or have a decent chance at beating Penn State in the season finale.
Favored? Come on. That's crazy. Favored?
They just lost to UCLA and Northwestern, who are 2 of the worst teams in the Big Ten.
You just flew cross country and saw how this team played against Washington. You can tell me they're going to be favored against anybody other than Purdue? You're crazy. Stop it. You've lost your mind.
What was your reaction to James Franklin getting fired?
I mean, it was just that. And I get it. I understand what the expectations were. And I think the fan base was in revolt. I think you saw some things from the players that didn't look positive at the end of the game. All that said, I mean, what does it say about college football? I mean, this guy was in the national semifinals a year ago, was a play away from beating Oregon and being number 1 of the country. I mean, this is how close this was 8 days ago that this stuff happened. I mean, it's kind of insane to think about it, really. I mean, he's got a pile of track record. Again, the track record a mile long. And even if you think it's time for him to go, to do it for me midway through the season and to pay him $50 million at a time when you could use $50 million for players, far more importantly than the coach of any kind. I was a little surprised, and I just wonder now who they're going to get to kind of fill that void. I mean, Matt Rule, okay, you can tell me he's a good coach, I guess. Is he sexy enough to worth doing all this? I don't know.
I think anyone but James Franklin will be very welcome in State College because this says more about Penn State than it does college sports, in my opinion. Penn State wants to win a national championship. It thinks, rightfully or wrongfully, that it is a program that should be competing year in, year out with the best in the country. And they didn't under James Franklin, who they call him Big Game James for a reason. He just doesn't win the big games, but he won enough of the little games to keep going. Now he lost the big games and the little games. They were sick of him already. And it was toxic. Now, can you imagine how toxic it would be at the end of the season when they're 4-8? So they needed to move on. I don't know if Matt Rule is exactly, if he has the sex appeal to be like this big, but he is a really good coach, He played at Penn State. He's from the area. I think it makes too much sense. And I understand the connection that Nebraska is also a big time program. He's ascending in that program. But Penn State is ready-made at this point to compete for a national championship. And it's going to be hard, I think, that unless Nebraska pays him twice what Penn State might pay him, for him to turn that down. But I don't think this is, I think the bigger thing for college sports is that this is going to end the time of coaches having $50 million buyouts and 10-year, $100 million contracts, because ADs are smart enough at least now to think that money that they get spent on a coach is much better placed on a roster. Because if you have a mediocre coach with an elite roster, you're going to beat a really good coach with a mediocre roster. I think that's pretty clear.
Right. Yes. Although Penn State did have an elite roster with a mediocre coach, and we saw where he took him. Mediocre is not the way for James Franklin. I mean, I think he was a high level, very good college football coach. I mean, won a lot of games, beat a lot of people, recruit, salesman. Yeah, he just couldn't get over the hump. And it's funny. It's kind of like where we are with Rutgers right now when you're looking at in completely different levels. Obviously, the hump much higher. Penn State hump's much higher than the Rutgers hump. But I think a lot of people are wondering, is Greg Schiano going to get this program over that next hump? And it's sort of like a fascinating, won a lot on certain levels, but also you still haven't seen what we're watching now. Just this inability to beat these teams on the same level, to beat, to beat an Iowa, to beat a Minnesota, to go on the road and win this game against Washington. So I know the frustration in the fan base from Rutgers. There are similarities, maybe not the same thing is happening certainly out there in State College, but yeah.
There are similarities if you want to find them. There are also key differences. Rutgers is in no way in position to even consider a $22 million buyout for Greg. So the lunatic fringe of the fan base who thinks there's any hope of moving on from Schiano, even if that was warranted, which I don't think we agree. We're nowhere near that point just yet, but that's nowhere near reality. And the other difference is that I think Penn State did have the means and the roster to compete with the big boys. I think Rutgers does have a roster to compete with the big boys, but the means with which to build it is nowhere near its competitors, right? So I think that's where the key distinctions are. But I will say that the big equality here is that you're right. Rutgers has not been able to win games that is either equal or slightly worse than the opponent. Like that's been an issue for years. That was an issue this year. And the difference between even Iowa and Minnesota, where you lose that game by, the last 5 minutes to determine the game, against Washington, that game was over, midway through the third quarter because Rutgers wasn't able to score when it had its chances. And Minnesota and Washington, after being shut down in the first half, just, woke up and just absolutely shredded that Rutgers defense.
Right. Yeah. And I think that was my takeaway from this game was that 4-8, 3-9 even are on the table for this team. Because they can't stop anybody. And I get it. Damon Williams Jr., good quarterback, really, but not that level. I mean, not 500 yards, good quarterback. Not, and it was any decent quarterback would have thrown for 3 yards against the Rutgers defense. These receivers were wide open, right? For weeks we were blaming, the pass rush on this Rutgers defense for not getting to the quarterback. That's the biggest problem. Well, now you got both things are true. A mobile quarterback can extend plays, get, and the guys down the field are just wide open. It's just incredible. I mean, they just couldn't stop anything. And that's a big problem. That's a big failure by this coaching staff, by Greg Schiano. I mean, you can look at it any direction you want. This is what I come back to with this defense. You can say, okay, well, Rob Smith he's just not a good coordinator. All right, well, Greg Schiano could have hired anybody in the world in the offseason, hired a guy he fired already. To do this. That's on Greg. The personnel is not good enough. All right. Well, why is the personnel not good enough? Did you put all of your resources you had into the offense? Did you miss on guys in the portal? Was the recruiting not good enough in the years before on some of these positions? All of these things are on the head coach. And it's not one thing that's failing right now in this defense. It is a bunch of things. And I think that's what's going to keep this team from, being competitive in all these games. When you say to me, hey, maybe Rutgers can beat Penn State, I'm going to say to you, no, they can't. I just watched their defense play Washington. I just see what's there. Like any team with some talent, which Penn State still has, is going to beat Rutgers.
Right. I'm not sure Penn State has infinitely more talent than Rutgers. I don't think anyone's disputing that. Will they have any desire to play that game at the end of the year when they're 4-8? That I don't know. Anyway, not to get ahead. A lot to go from there. One, the defense, the issues are all of the above, essentially, right? Like the recruiting over the years has not been there. The development over the years has not been there. The transfer portal, obviously, there's been a lot of misses. How much of that is because of the limited budget that we're working with? We will never really know because this stuff is so opaque. But I think clearly when you have what Rutgers' budget is, you have to hit and they did not hit on a lot of them. To your point on the pressure, they got pressure on him on 9 dropbacks out of 32. Like, that's just not enough. They're not, when they got pressure in the first 2 or 3 drives, they stopped him. They forced a missed field goal. They forced the 3 and out. They forced the 4 and out because they were getting in the backfield and getting to him, right? So I think the pressure is where everything starts, and they're clearly not doing it. Now, in the secondary, when they don't get pressure, Greg said it best, right? There were plays there where if the quarterback just throws the ball up in the general vicinity of a receiver, he's going to catch it because he's so wide open. Like the second touchdown they had, it was Bo Mascal one-on-one. Boston just kind of shoves him a little bit to the side, and he's just sitting there waiting for the ball for 2 or 3 seconds because he's so open. This defense has so many issues. And I think that I agree with Greg in a way about play calling being overrated, because they can call the greatest play in the world, but they just don't have the talent and the guys to impact the quarterback. And then no matter if you have, Jalen Ramsey playing cornerback for you, he can't guard a guy for 10 seconds because the quarterback does what he wants. And then when you do bottle up the quarterback, a guy like Devon Williams, who is mobile, he finds the seam and just runs into acres of space because either A, the linebackers don't know where to be, or the way things are, he just has so much space to run into and they can't tackle him in space. Jay Elad got beaten in space by a receiver really badly. Like, the issues are long, and to your point, that will be why that's why there's a legitimate question of, will Rutgers win another game this year? I don't think that's an outlandish question after what we just watched the first half of the year.
No, and if you said, will they win one? Yes. If you put it on 1.5, like go over under. I don't know which direction I'm going. Put it that way. I think they can beat Purdue. I think they can beat Maryland. I still think, those are two. Will they beat both of them? I don't know, man. That's a tough question. And this is one that comes up a lot now. Would a 4-8 season with a win in Penn State be better than a 6-6 win without it? I mean, would a win against a damaged Penn State, James Franklin fired, reeling team, would it be enough for you to save this season? What do you think?
No, I don't think this win over Penn State. I shouldn't say this win. If they beat Penn State, this Penn State, who lost their starting quarterback, who fired their coach, who will have players entering the portal en masse over the next 30 days, who their expectations were to win a national title game. So a potential winning in for a bowl game at the Pinstripe Bowl is not going to get them to any level of desire, right? They barely wanted to play against Northwestern. You think they're going to want to play against Rutgers 2 days after Thanksgiving? All that said, it would be nice for Rutgers to end a 3-decade drought against Penn State. I don't think there's any universe. I guess my answer to this question comes with this answer. There has been discussion of whether if Rutgers beats Penn State on that last game, would they rush the field? Should the fans storm the field? My answer to that question is no. If you think the answer is yes, that means you think it's a win that salvages the season. If you think the answer is no, like I do, then I think it's a win that it'll feel almost empty, I think.
It would be embarrassing to storm the field. A national embarrassment to storm the field against I don't care how many times they've beaten you in a row. It's a bad team. You're beating a bad Penn State team. I will say a win over them would be satisfying. I think it would erase a lot of the bad this season. I think it would, especially come at the end of the year. It would, it would certainly, to me, it's better than winning the Pinstripe Bowl, beating Penn State. I don't care what Penn State's record is. It would be a satisfying thing. It would not be a lasting thing. It would not be the same as, say, the Louisville win or games that stay with you for years down the road because of the stakes involved. There'd be no stakes. It would just be nice. It would feel good. That's what we come to the stadium to be happy sometimes, right? I think in that way, it would be a good win. It's not a storm the field win. Do not storm the field, people. My goodness, can you imagine? And I understand why, like people, and I defended Rutgers fans. You were in here, Brian, when they stormed the field after they beat Michigan in the first Big Ten win. It was Michigan. I don't care how bad they were. It's your first Big Ten win, big home crowd. Yeah, okay. Well, I understand that completely. This is not the same scenario as that, though. It's just not.
I agree. I think if they beat Penn State, it would be a lot similar to that Michigan win in that, yes, on paper, you're beating a blue blood program in the Big Ten, but you're beating a wounded animal, essentially. So I guess to get clear on this, you think it would be better for Rutgers to go 4-8 and beat Penn State, which Max Scheiner coined. I think it's a great little phrase. 4-8 and beat Penn State. 4-8 and beat Penn State. Or you think that would be better than going 6-6 with wins over Maryland and Purdue and going to the Pinstripe Bowl, which is 100% where they would go if they go 6-6.
Well, your math doesn't add up, though. wins over Maryland, Purdue will get you 5-7. So who else are you beating?
Oh, that's a fair point.
You get another win, you beat Illinois, then all right, I'll take that. If that's the other option, I'm taking that. If you're telling me that that's possible, you're going to go on the road and beat a good Illinois team and then go to the Pinstripe Bowl, okay. That's a better season than 4-8 and beating a bad Penn State team. I guess I'm just looking at it like if you were taking care of business against Iowa and you're sitting here at 4-2 and then you're going to go 6-6, the math doesn't add up either way. Yeah, I would still think that given the choice right now, it would be more fun to beat them here, kick them once when they're down than it would be to go to the Bronx. We've gone to the Bronx, man. We've won that game. I'm going with that. I'm going with 4-8 beat Penn State. I like that.
So you think, to be clear, will they win one more game in the last 6? Yes or no?
I do. Yes, I do. I think and I come back to this all the time. And this is why I wrote why I think this team is so infuriating was the word I came up with. Not bad. Infuriating was I think there's talent. I do. I think when you've got the best quarterback you've had in the Big Ten and you've got 3 potential NFL receivers, certainly one, maybe 2, and you've got the best running back. I mean, you've got one of the better running backs in the league. I think Antoine Raymond has become that player. He's an elite running back, and you've got a decent interior offensive line. I come back to this all the time. You got 500 yards against Washington. You scored 19 points. How's it even possible? Stuff like that is just that's why, to me, infuriating is the right word. I think this team is too good not to beat Purdue or Maryland to win one of these last couple of games. I just don't, because the defense is so bad. I don't have faith that they'll win too. If I had to bet on that over under on 1.5, I would take the under. I'm not saying I feel good about it. I just don't think I'm just not confident they'll win too.
Sure, I agree. The Maryland and Purdue games will essentially be 3 teams that will have to try not to beat themselves, right? Purdue beat itself against Minnesota. They should have beat Minnesota. Maryland, 2 weeks in a row, has beat itself against Nebraska and Washington. Rutgers, I don't know if they've necessarily beaten themselves, but they've certainly blown leads in all 3 games, right? Mm-hmm. So I think the more infuriating thing, that's the perfect word for the Washington game, is that for spurts, they played well. They moved the ball. Then they'd get to the red zone and completely just self-combust. They would play well defensively in the first half. They got stops on the first 3 drives. And then to go from that, to go from being competitive to getting absolutely shredded. There's no other way to put it. Those first 4 drives in the second half, they were it looked like a varsity Bergen Catholic team against a freshman Kearney team. They just had no resistance.
Right.
So even the ebbs and flows within games, let alone the season, I think infuriating is a perfect way to put it. I don't know. I know last year we talked a lot about missed opportunity because of how the schedule is. I don't know if this season them missing a bowl game is a missed opportunity per se, but I think you'll look back at how good this offense is, the players they had, and to think that they didn't take advantage of it would feel like a major disappointment, obviously.
Totally. Yep. All right. Let's talk about why we're here, why we're both in Piscataway today. Well, you've got Greg Schiano's press conference coming up soon. I came down specifically because Kelly Zinn met with us, some of us in the media, about the RNIL launch. Right here, I can look out on the stadium scoreboard right now. If you come to the homecoming game against Oregon this weekend, you're going to be besieged with this. RNIL is the new NIL fund. Kelly Zinn has come in here in 2 months. That was her priority, and just completely revamped how the NIL structure is going to look for this. And I know a lot of people are going to hear that and just tune it out. I understand completely. You've heard NIL for 4 years. You've been asked to subscribe, to give some money here and there. This is completely different. This is, trying to get to a point now where they're going to take corporate dollars and funnel it toward players and to build a structure where, they can work in tandem with New Jersey corporate world and get both in a win-win situation. And she explains it eloquently. And I still think people are going to tune out. I understand, but this is it. This is kind of like, if Rutgers is going to succeed in this marketplace, in this world, this has got to work. Right. That was my main takeaway from talking to Kelly Zinn today.
Yes, she understands the urgency of NIL. She's building out a staff. She's supposed to have at least 4 hires made, 2 of them coming next week, she told us. And again, there's urgency there. There's an understanding that if this team is going to have any success, team meaning football and men's basketball, it's going to have some fund that's comparable to its peers, right? She made a good point that NIL doesn't guarantee wins. I agree with that. Obviously, we saw it with Penn State, but I think having comparable funds gives you a much better chance, right? And I don't think NIL, to be clear, I know people are going to say this, is the reason they lost to Minnesota, Washington, and Iowa. I don't think if they had an extra $1 million to work with, suddenly they score 7 more points, they get a defensive stop. But it certainly would give them a chance of having better players, which ultimately gives you a better chance to win, right? Will it work? I don't know. I don't know. This will be a big test of like, yes, the previous administration did nothing, right? So any effort
did less than nothing, worked actively against it for years, right? Correct. And I think they're digging out of this hole now, and they're very hesitant to talk about what they inherited, and I understand completely why. We can talk about what they inherited. It was a mess. I mean, there's no, they inherited a situation where coaches were doing this on their own, and that's maybe that's part of the coach's responsibility. You would think a coach would be a closer, not the salesperson. Like if if you needed to you had a $500,000 account at the end, you need the coach to come in and take someone to dinner. I think Greg Schiano's getting in the car and drive, he's happy to do that. There was none of that. It was every single outreach, every single dollar raised was, them dragging people to these dinners in the middle of game weeks, Greg Schiano doing this. It was just stupid. And so no matter what you say about where the team is now, you have to look at it in the context of what Pat Hobbs left, and then forget about that. Then there was no athletic director for a year, right? Pat Hobbs left in scandal. They went another 9 months before they hired Kelly Zinn. So they wasted another year. So just keep this in mind. Like there's no, that's part of the backdrop here. It's part of why these teams are struggling. And you can't say it's the only reason they're struggling. You can't dismiss it either. You just can't. It's not fair to them to say like, well, gee, I mean, it's just not fair. So yeah, and I think what I think when I see Kelly Zinn is she understands what needed to be put in place in here, and she's also very confident about it, Brian. That's like the takeaway, because my feeling is, having watched this, having been around people who've tried to do this, and for the most part, smart people who have failed to really get people involved. I mean, Kelly Zinn's like, hey, look, you expect in January, we're going to have a fund ready to help this team compete. And that to me, like, there's the confidence in that from someone who's done it, from someone who understands how it needs to be done. And I think the fact that they've prioritized this, they're building a staff, they're making hires, they could have 6 people out there doing this. And I think it's pretty impressive given the time that since she's only been here for a couple months.
Right. And she's told me that they don't have time to waste time. And she's clearly living up to that motto by filling every hour she can with filling out a staff and doing this. I think she has to be confident because of the magnitude of the issue she's trying to fix. Right. I don't think if you're supremely confident, you have any chance of digging your way out of this hole. To your point, her big thing was alleviating coaches from having to do this work. Greg Schiano wasn't sitting down at a dinner to close an NIL deals. He was picking, this is metaphorically, of course, I don't know what exactly he was doing, but essentially his job was calling people to make the reservation, picking people up, taking them to dinner, walking them to their car, valeting their car, doing literally every part of the process himself to get the money. And I think that you make a great point in that Greg is an elite closer. If you put him in a room with someone that's been worked up to potentially give money, he can get it over the finish line. And it's much easier for him to do that and have time to do other things. The other point I wanted to make is that, yes, I want to be clear that this does not absolve Greg Schiano from the issues that are on the field this year. NIL is not the reason for a lot of these issues directly. It plays a part in it, but Greg Schiano and his staff and the players can still be criticized for what they did. I don't want people to think that we are absolving everything because of NIL, but to, again, what you said, to pretend like NIL and where Rutgers stands with the rest of the conference doesn't play a factor on the field would be unfair and not accurate, right?
Right. Yeah, I'm in camp that NIL was not the reason they lost to Iowa and Minnesota. Certainly, if you believe that, I'm with you. But yeah, to your point, it's certainly the backdrop. And I think what's going to happen now is that we'll have a better idea. Like I think it's fair, if you're a fan right now, it's fair to wonder if Greg Schiano is going to get the program over the hump. It's completely fair, right? It's year 6. You're losing the same games in the same way, in the same frustrating fact. It is completely fair to wonder. I think what Kelly Zinn has to do now is to check this, to take this off the list of potential reasons. Like, okay, is it because Greg Schiano is just not the coach built for this situation, or is it because he doesn't have the resources to work with? Check that box and see what happens. I think that's what's going to happen next. And if you're screaming for him, to be fired and to pay $20 million for him to be unloaded, you're forgetting that that's $20 million that this school does not have to pay players as it is. The resources for player personnel, I mean, it's just a tough sell. This is not Penn State. It's not Penn State.
It's a tough spot to be in, but I do agree that would be one less thing to hold against Greg Schiano, right? If you give him the players and the money and they still lose these games, then you could pin it more so on him and his staff. Whereas now there's always in the backdrop that if they had more money, they'd have a better chance. That's always part of the conversation.
Yeah. All right, let's take some questions. We had a bunch of them in Discord. A lot of them were along those same lines about what's going to happen, the decisions to be made. And a lot of them came in before Penn State made its decision. So, but this was one that what would be a better investment? And this is of the reported $100 million from private equity. That's another thing we asked Kelly Zinn about. She couldn't comment. It's not done yet. It seems like it's moving in that direction. There'll be money from private equity in the Big Ten. I don't know specifically where that money will go or what they'll use it for. I think, obviously we've talked about this a million times. Rutgers has facility issues they need to address, a deficit. There's a million places the money can go. But yeah, what would be a better investment for the report? $100 million? Would it be cleaning house? Would it be giving Greg $25 million to flip the roster to still not make adjustments, or cleaning house? It's a very funny comment. The point being, would it be good to invest that money in getting rid of Greg Schiano? Yeah, no, I don't think so. I come back to this a lot. It's a lot. It is a big nut. And I see what's happening in college sports. I think it's crazy, what some of these schools have done, in paying off these buyouts. And Rutgers just does not have the donor base that can absorb it.
So the question is this: would you rather spend $25 million on a roster to give Greg Schiano a team comparable to teams in the middle of the pack? Or would you rather spend $30 million firing Greg Schiano, another $30 million on a staff that is at least as competent as Greg Schiano, right? You have to spend a lot of money to get people at his level or better. Again, Greg is the 12th best paid coach in the Big Ten, so it's not like they're splashing money on a coach. So you have to pay probably 1.5 times what Greg makes and his staff. And then you have to spend another $25 million on players anyway, right?
Yeah.
So in an ideal world, would it be better to spend that money on Urban Meyer and get the 2018 Buckeyes? Yes, that would be better, but it's not realistic. I think for what Rutgers has, if you get that infusion of cash, the answer is clearly spend it on a better roster. And then if they go 4-8, 5-7 again, then there's your proof that Greg isn't the guy, and you can kind of move on from there. But to even think about spending that money on doubling down on a coaching staff and then paying for a roster again anyway, it just doesn't make sense.
Another question: what are the odds this offense comes back for another year with AJ Surace as quarterback? Does Strong come back if it means he might be a first or second rounder, or is the quarterback gap so large that he's better off moving to the NFL? If Ian Strong can be drafted, I think in the first 2 days, he should go to the NFL. And I think he probably will. I think he is a prospect. So now you're looking at does KJ Duff come back for another year? Am I wrong to think he was the better of the two receivers against Washington?
He only got 4 targets, shockingly.
Yeah, that's true. Is that right? Only 4? Man.
Yes.
All right. That's wild. What about Antoine Raymond? He's coming back, right?
So I think, to your point, Ian Strong is gone, barring a shocker, right? It would have to be a bad thing. It has to be kind of a Tyreen Powell situation where he gets hurt and is kind of forced to come back, right? Otherwise, he's going to be it'd be shocking if he wasn't one of the top 3 rounds the way he's playing. So I think your priorities have to be KJ Duff, no doubt. Antoine Raymond, no doubt. Mm-hmm. And then the tackles that you have back, maybe a Ryder Langsdale or a Mushu Giwa, and I know they're not playing right now, but you have to have some foundation there because you're already replacing the entire interior of the offensive line. So I guess the point being that there's no guarantee that KJ Duff and Antoine Raymond come back because they would command a lot of money in the portal and Rutgers has to re-recruit them. But if you're going to place order of priorities, those two are 1A and 1B of guys you need to come back to be able to at least have a chance of maintaining the same level offensively as what you have now.
How many losses are we away from it being a smart decision to play AJ Surace? I know all Ethan's done for this program. I get it. He hasn't been great. And this is not me saying free Surace. This is an honest question. Like, at what point is it just smart to give him some experience to see what he does with the offense? Does that happen this year?
No, I don't think Greg is the kind of guy that would do that anyway. I legitimately think even if they were 3-8 going into Penn State, and it wasn't Penn State, it was Purdue, for example, he would still play Ethan Kaliakmanis. One, out of respect for Ethan Kaliakmanis, and two, because I think winning every game does matter. Making a bowl game might be the thing for us, but I think them wanting to go 4-8 versus 3-9 is a thing. Also, to the way the schedule breaks out, I don't think you want to give your quarterback of the future his first real snaps as a starter against Ohio State, which may have the best defense in college football, or I should say does have the best defense in college football, and Penn State, which will not care, but they're still massive and will be a difficult challenge for him. So I think there's really no benefit in playing AJ Surace. And I do not see that happening, barring, an injury or something like that to Ethan.
Along those lines with the offense, why does this offense struggle in the red zone? And I put it in my column, but had 3 70-yard drives, double-digit plays, more than 5 minutes, and got 0 points on them, which is just borderline incredible. Why is this offense struggling in the red zone?
They can't move the ball on the ground, right? They're not able to work with the short space. A lot of what they get are these so-called flyover yards that Greg Schiano talks about, where their wide receivers get into space and Ethan is able to find them on deep routes. There's not as much space in the red zone. I'm not sure why they don't throw more fades to KJ Duff and Ian Strong. We talk about how big and tall they are and how strong they are and how athletic they are. And it just doesn't seem like Dave Anderson had a great point on Aaron Brightman's podcast. When they didn't have these kind of guys, they throw fade balls every time they were in the red zone.
Yeah.
And now they have KJ Duff, and outside of the first drive, they just don't. Right. I don't know. I think part of it is play calling, part of it is personnel, part of it is, there's also moments like where Ethan is in the red zone. I think it's the third drive, and he just starts to scramble and his knee hits the ground and they lose 2 yards. Right. Like, just, I know lack of execution is a big deal. I think they didn't execute, and I think they didn't particularly have great play selection in the red zone.
This is a good question that I should have tied into the NIL discussion, but I'm watching the pregame of Indiana today, and no one epitomizes us historically, if not worse, than Indiana football. How much do we need in NIL for players, and how much do we need in coaches, and how do we get it? I think the point is there an Indiana scenario here where it can turn around quickly with the right amount of money, and how much money is that? And you tried to ask Kelly Zinn, to your credit, to give you a dollar figure, and she's much too smart to do that. So
yes, and I don't think any other Big Ten AD would tell us money anyway, but it's worth a shot. It always is. How much money? I don't know. A lot of money. Mark Cuban was quoted this week as saying he didn't say how much money, but a big amount of money to Indiana NIL. When Mark Cuban says a big amount of money, this guy's worth billions of dollars. That's a lot of friggin' money, right? So I guess the answer is Mark Cuban money. I know people love to point out Indiana. Indiana is just like an all-time anomaly in that they just got insane amount of NIL investment, and they found a diamond in the rough coach in Kurt Cignetti, who has won his entire career, and for some reason no one ever gave him a shot, and he's supremely confident. He's backing up, which is what I appreciate most about him. Like, he will talk smack to you, and then he will win these games. But they have the money to build a roster. I don't know what to tell you. I know I've saw some stuff about the lack of star rankings on this team, but they have an elite defense. And it's not because Kurt Cignetti is drawing up these plays that Rob Smith doesn't know about. It's because they have much better players, and that's why they're winning at Oregon, which is no small feat.
That was incredible. Yeah, to beat Penn State and Oregon. Yeah, I got to tell you, I did not think, I didn't think they had that. I didn't think they were that good. Clearly, they were no fluke last year. Wild.
Correct. So what does Rutgers have to do to become Indiana? Get a lot of money. Find Mark Cuban, the Mark Cuban of Rutgers, because there are some out there. The Home Depot guy, may he rest in peace. He was the kind of guy that had that kind of money. Find that guy and get him to cut a big check. That's the answer.
If I hit the Powerball, I'd write a big check just for shits and giggles. Do you think that, here's my question. If I hit the Powerball and I propose to Greg Shannon, I'm going to give you $25 million, but as return on that investment, I get to go behind the scenes and watch every single meeting and write a book about it. Would Greg say, get the hell out of here? Or would he give me a key card that moment? That's my question for you. Like the ultimate control freak letting me, of all people, into the building for $25 million. What do you think?
You mean a book like the one who I cannot, for some reason, I can't remember the name.
John Feinstein,
Indiana
Season
basketball.
on the Brink. Yep, that's it.
Correct.
I want to
Season
be the John
brink.
Feinstein for Rutgers football. Yeah.
If you offered Greg, let's say, multi-year investment of money, instead of 25 for 1 year, let's say 75 for 3 years, right?
Fuck,
I think he would let you.
I don't know, dude. I don't want to do it for 3 years. I just won the Powerball. I only got like a few months of interest in this. I want to go on vacation. I want to go like to, buy an island and off in the Caribbean and go away from here. I don't want to spend all my money on this. It's 1 year. That's the deal. 1 year, 25 million. That's it.
How about we meet in the middle? 2 years, 50 million.
Wait, you're in the position to negotiate with me. I'm the one with the check. I'll go over. I'll do this with basketball. I'll go over to Steve Peichel and say, Steve, 1 year, 25 million. Steve's going to shake my hand, take my money, and give me a key card. I know that for a fact. He doesn't care.
Fine. 1 year, 35 million. If you do that.
All right, fair.
If you do that,
yeah.
Greg Schiano would let you call 3 offensive plays per game.
Be a shovel pass. Every one of them. Screen pass. Everyone will be a screen pass. What should we call here? Yes. It's fourth and 40. Screen pass, coach. Screen pass. Got to do it.
But yes, absolutely. Absolutely. He would let you attend every meeting. He'd let you sleep in his office if you want to.
I would be a good rich person. I tell you, I'd be a crazy rich person. I'd be a Mark Cuban crazy if I could be rich. I wouldn't run for president like Mark Cuban might, but I'd be crazy. Be on TV. It'd be fun. I need to be rich. What were we talking about? Oh yeah, questions from the readers. That's really all the questions we have, because all the questions are the same question. So, thanks for writing in, though. All right, what else you got? You have you've put a big paragraph here under what else. I'm going to just let you go here. You've got to eat crow, which I'm happy to just sit back and let you do it. That's exciting.
Yes, we have to eat crow here. Jim McElderry, we entered the season saying that him and Coquise Washington are probably the two coaches with the hottest seat. Well, Jim McElderry has responded to our doubts. They are ranked 18th last week. They're probably going to move up this week because they beat Wisconsin on Friday. They're now 8-2-2 overall, 3-1-1 in the Big Ten, tied with UCLA for third. And if they beat second place Maryland on Tuesday, they will go into first place in the Big Ten. So they've gone from a program struggling over the last 2 years to legitimately having a shot at earning an NCAA tournament bid without having to win the Big Ten tournament. So credit to Jim McElderry for the turnaround at men's soccer. And we'll see how the rest of the season goes. On the other hand, I guess to have success on one side, you have to sacrifice the other. Women's soccer is having its worst year in 15 years, probably. They're on pace to not make the NCAA tournament for the first time in 13 years. They're 3-6-4, 1-6-1 in the Big Ten. They've lost 5 straight games by a combined score of 10-2. And they're at a point where they have to win the Big Ten tournament to make the NCAA tournament, which is, for anyone that's followed my Carney guy, Mike O'Neill's program over the years, that this is unheard of. So rough year for the Lady Knights.
Yeah, I think Mike O'Neill's got he's allowed to have one of those. There's no question.
No doubt.
Yeah,
no doubt about that.
With his track record, what's the deal? What happened with men's soccer? Because that would have been one of the programs that not only forget the coaching change, I would have just de-emphasized it if I were athletic director. And I'm not being mean. I mean, you look at where Rutgers we have this conversation a bunch, where Rutgers can be successful, where it's got to prioritize. It would not be men's soccer. Why is this team good? Do we know?
I don't know. I got a great question. I have not done a deep dive. My guess, my high level thoughts that only come from his brain. I think they got better players. I don't know how. I think they got better players, and they're now able to compete with Big Ten teams. I think that's really the answer. Now, how they got those better players, I'll have to do a deep dive on that, but I think that's the answer.
Maybe they've got a Mark Cuban over there. Someone who's going to write a book and we don't know about it. I tell you throw $25 million at a men's soccer team, you'd win some games.
Yeah. I mean, you'd be up there with, it's not like men's soccer is a sport dominated by the blue bloods. I mean, you got Akron, you got Vermont, you got Denver, you got, these small MAC level teams competing for national championships, right? So the barrier for success is very low as far as how much money you need to invest. Alexi Lalas, he made a lot of money, I think, as a TV commentator. He's a very proud Rutgers alum. I don't know if he's giving money, but if he's not, I don't see why he wouldn't sprinkle a little bit on the alma mater.
Could be. Absolutely. Yeah. Then why isn't Carly Lloyd giving it to the women? They're both on TV all the time.
I imagine she has not made the amount of money that Alexi Lalas has, right?
That's true. Probably right. Good point.
So.
All right. Field hockey. Huge game against number 1 Northeastern at home Friday afternoon.
Northwestern.
Win? Northwestern. You have, I see. Yes. You just forgot the W. Against Northwestern at home? Okay.
Yes. If they win, they're tied for first place with Maryland. Field hockey is right about the same spot they usually are, competing for a regular season Big Ten title, almost surely making the NCAA tournament. Meredith Civico has a wagon down there at the Bauer Track and Field Complex, and I think clearly Kelly Zinn sees that as one of the programs that could have success. Just if you look at the years of success they had. So again, I don't know how much money they're investing in field hockey, but I can't imagine the barrier to entry for success there is very high either.
Right. All right. What else we got? We got homecoming. Any idea what the events are for the homecoming weekend?
I don't.
Yeah. Just come.
This
come
is the kind of insight you get at the Rutgers Rant.
What kind of uniforms we're wearing? Nothing.
My guess is you have to wear the traditional, the red jersey, white pants,
right,
red helmet.
You would be your guess. I'm going with that too. Big crowd would gave over under 45,000. Which way are you going?
Announced sellout already.
Announced sellout. Oh, it is announced sellout already. I didn't see that. Okay.
Announced sellout. I would guess it's a night game. It's a big opponent, although Oregon does not travel that well. Of all the national brands, they're probably the least, the fan base size is probably the smallest. I would say if you're going to give me over under 45, I'll go slightly over, maybe 47.
Okay. Fair enough. Students will be here. It'll be a fun night. This weather thing will be passed by then, hopefully. And we'll be here. All right. Let's sign off there. We'll be back later in the week to preview that game completely with a guest TB determined. We're already struggling to find guests, keep them on the schedule. What a surprise. Who would have possibly foreseen that? We would have trouble keeping after a good run there to start. Hopefully we'll have someone to come and help us predict. If not, it'll just be us two. If you got any ideas, shoot us a note. Thanks for listening.
Thank you for listening to the Rutgers Rant, sponsored by the Heldridge Hotel. Head to nj.com/Rutgers for more Scarlet Knight content.